Hello.
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 Hi. Welcome all. Buenos dias, etc., etc. Welcome to Madrid. This is our very last episode of Eat NATO for breakfast. We have to self-critically report that we did not manage to dissolve or lead to the dissolution of NATO, but maybe that's also a very high order. But that's okay. We are here together. This is really awesome. We are here together today with Maurizio from Potere and Popolo, with Mika from Pan Africanism Today, and of course, your hosts truly, Nora and me, Franziska. We are all members of the IPA, of the International People's Assembly, and so this will be our International People's Assembly show today. Because we are here and in person in Madrid, I first off would like Nora to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the city. What is the impact of NATO? What do the people feel? What is going on? But also, what's the counter activities? What's the summit plans, etc. Lead us through the entire process.
Well, I think that there is we can see a lot of contradictions only thinking about how the NATO summit is organized in Madrid. For instance, they are talking about our security, and honestly, like Madrid is going to be blocked. Just to clarify, like the peace summit, like the popular actions against NATO, they are happening this weekend, but actually NATO and its leaders are coming on the 29th and 30th. What we see is that a country like Spain that has a lot of issues like housing, healthcare, etc., is spending 35 million euros only in these 2 days in the name of peace and security. Also, what we see is more than 10,000 policemen, national guards, all these kind of military and police forces deployed. Okay, so under the name of security and peace, we have more than 10,000 people blocking the city. Even the mayor of Madrid told us not to go to work because even the public transport is not working. In their own words, what is going on is that it's called the Operation Irene. And also another contradiction. You know what Irene is? Is the goddess from Greece of peace. So in the name of the goddess of peace, we cannot, go out and go to work. Just to say that is the most, like the security measures that we are facing are unprecedented in Madrid. We can only compare it with when the Pope came in 2011. And in fact, we know that if the Pope is here, it will be here in Madrid, he will repeat this thing of the war in Ukraine is a war that wasn't prevented or also maybe promoted. So all these contradictions are happening here. We have drones. We have also Sweden and Finland coming suddenly. They are confirming. Maybe Zelensky will be here. We don't know if physically but or online, because we know that he does both. And also they are stopping Schengen space for everyone. They cannot enter the country. So just to say, in the name of the God of peace, we are going to be blocked and we are going to be surrounded by militaries, because NATO is militarism, and this is what we are seeing in Madrid.
Can you say a little bit about the peace summit and the demonstration and what's going to happen for the people who are interested in learning more about the NATO counter summit?
Well, we began yesterday. In fact, yesterday we had an amazing opening. You can see it online. You can see Franziska making an amazing speech, by the way. So you have to look for it. It's there is a part of the panels that are going to be streamed by Transform Europe YouTube channel, so you can follow that there. Also, you can go to our website, peacesummitmadrid.org, and you can find all information. We made even 2 playlists for Spanish speakers and for English speakers. And also, the most interesting thing should be together, seeing this situation that everything is blocked and we are not allowed to have our own freedom of movement. We should be all together on the demonstration tomorrow at 12 from Atocha to Plaza de España. It's a unitary demonstration with all national platforms and also a lot of international guests. If we can, we are going to make some videos for you also to see what's going on. But yeah, like it's important to the demo tomorrow because they are also bringing fear, not to be able for us to mobilize. They are saying that everything is going to be very dangerous. And even they are depicting the people that ask for the permit as extreme right wingers with, previous situation with policemen and stuff. So they are depicting us as criminals when we have here people that are promoting war, were promoting war in the past.
Mhm.
So it's more important than ever to show that peace is not criminal, that peace is something that we build together and is something that we have to build together also in public space, confronting this kind of security that they want to bring to us.
Maurizio, talking about international guests, how are you finding it?
Thank you very much for having the possibility to be here. Very nice for me. The first time in Eat NATO for breakfast. And yeah, we definitely are living like dangerous times. What you are saying, it's crazy how the city of Madrid and the Spanish state are like imposing all these limitations and all these contradictions. It was I have to laugh how like the mainstream medias also are speaking about that. When you look at the newspapers today, this morning, I just opened 2-3 newspapers, and it was like they smash it in our face. It was like the first page of a national newspaper in Italy, Corriere della Sera, was the US is abolishing the abortion rights, and the second line on the same main page was like US is sending more heavy weapons to Ukraine. So you see these huge contradictions. They do not feel that they have to cover like these contradictions. They smash it in our faces, and this is exactly what we are living also, like I think in Madrid today and in the next days with the presence of NATO and the NATO summit in here. But I also think that there is like the wind is turning. The wind is turning since years, and I think also with this war, with this conflict, a belief in a world without war and imperialism is really increasing. We can say that we are like a kind of social majority in the sense, if you look at the public opinions that never are published publicly in the mainstream medias, but you have like numbers of surveys. They are showing like over 45% of the European population is against war. Over 45% of the population in Europe is against sending weapons and militarizing the conflict in Ukraine. So this is like the social majority we are. And now the question is how to transform the social majority in a political majority. And this is, I think, our huge task, a task that demands like 2 steps. First, like to define our political demands around this transition from social majority to political majority. And the second, like how we can organize the masses to impose these demands on our governments, also taking the governments for imposing by ourselves this thing. So there is like the need of focusing on the actual dilemmas of humanity, what we can define as dilemmas of humanity, and that was done also already in the structures of the International People's Assembly. This was reflected above all in the work that was done by the Executive Secretariat of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, the ALBA, and in collaboration with the Instituto Simón Bolívar and the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. So we have a plan to save the planet. We have already, in a way, developed our demands and concretized in a written form. And I think this is a good base to go on also with this mobilization against war, against NATO, because the mobilization against NATO, against the war, will not stop with the end of the summit here in Madrid. We have to go on, and this is a way we can build our campaign to focus really on the dilemmas of humanity. So the question is, what are the main contradictions today? How can we understand them, and how can we organize? Maybe, Michaela, you want to
Yeah, and it's important that we start off with giving a concrete analysis of what the material contradictions are and how they manifest, because as we've been hearing, it's all about security threats. Security is the big issue of our time, rather than thinking about what are the fundamental threats to humanity. And in our plan to save the planet, which unfortunately we don't have the cute little booklet, it's like this small.
But there's a link. There's a link that we will place so you can download it.
All free to download and to
All free to
circulate.
download.
And so for us, what we identified along in this putting this process together is that there are three fundamental contradictions which we name as the three apartheids. And we use apartheid very specifically because we're trying to name specifically this deep racialized, you can't say sexicized, but this deeply divisionist form of segregating society, so you can keep the working masses away, weaponizing things like racism, patriarchy, ethnicity, nationality. And we think about it as money apartheid, medical apartheid, and food apartheid. And just to give a few of the kind of recent facts and statistics around it is, one is that this isn't a new crisis, which we've all been harping on, that this is before COVID, before Ukraine, we had this deeply segregated society. And the one example that I'm always using is that in 2019, they found that 22 of the richest men in the world had more collective wealth than all African women, which is 325 million or roundabouts. So imagine in a continent where these women produce 70% of food production, so they are sustaining the society, they have no collective wealth that can compare to these 22, at the time, 22 billionaires. And this is in a continent that's extremely wealthy of natural resources, mineral resources, human resources, young population, largely unemployed, who could be contributing to the society. But yet we have this deep contradiction, which we know has only worsened because I think since the COVID pandemic, it was like 570 billionaires were added.
You probably update the numbers to make it worse.
Whilst I think it's around 263 million people are going to fall into poverty in terms of the UN standards, like not even in terms of our standards of what we think social security should look like. And I think it's something like at the rate of every 33 hours, 1 million people fall into poverty. I mean, that's insane. So that's the kind of money apartheid that we have. Then we have, of course, a medical apartheid, which I think, unfortunately, of course, is happening before COVID, where, 64 countries in the world in 2020 were largely using their social spending to service their debts, not contributing to their healthcare system or anything like that. And of course, it's worsened because the division is so massive that, I think it's like there were 40 new pharma billionaires. So of those 500, 40 of them came from the pharmaceutical industry. And within pharma, your Modernas, your Pfizers, they're basically making around $1,000 per second in terms of the way they're profiting from COVID production. And lastly, I mean, in terms of food apartheid, and we don't want to harp on about it because we know in terms of what's been happening with how the wheat production and supply chain has been disrupted due to the war. But 1 in 3 people are facing the threat of hunger. But ultimately, it's not because of Ukraine, it's because we live in this deeply segregated society with those who produce, like those 70% of women who produce, or 70% of food production produced by women, and yet they have no social security, no access to education, healthcare, reproductive rights, etc. Yet they're producing all the social wealth that contributes to the sustainability of that society. And those are some of the things that we examine inside our study, or inside this proposal to save the planet. The plan. And it's extremely important because ultimately, if we don't understand at minimum what the basic issues in society are, the material realities, and how it's born of a very deep contradiction in terms of those who, I hate to use it, but the haves and have-nots, but the producers and the takers, then we can't actually confront the social ills of our society.
Yeah, thank you for that, for lining out these contradictions. So let's talk a little bit more about the actual document. So the plan to save the planet was created by a bunch of research institutes worldwide under the guidance of the ALBA, TCP, and the TRICON. Do we want to talk a little bit about the points that are the main issues that are being picked up? because we feel maybe this is where we should link it to the Peace Summit, and you have done this a little bit already, and you have to talking about security. What is security? If we want to equate security with peace to some extent, then we also very quickly come to the realization that peace means actually reaching security for people, and security for people is not accomplished by buying more weapons, by arming the country, by arming a country, or even by arming the people. It is realized mainly through securing the social securities, the social having the, what is it called, the social provisions that a society needs. And this is how the plan to save the planet is also laid out. There is like, in the plan, there is like a food section which talks about food sovereignty on a almost global scale, like what does it mean for a country to be food sovereign, and then down to communities, etc., etc. It talks about health and education, etc., like all these different topics. It talks about housing. I think for the next round, just to keep it flowing and make it also interesting and concrete, because you can all download the plan to save the planet. Just download it. This is something for you to read.
And if you're in Madrid, we have the physical booklets.
Oh, yeah.
So we print them, but we forgot.
And you can come by and pick up a copy.
Yeah.
That's sure. But let's talk concretely about, I know that the organizations that are within the IPA are all working in their own ways on different focus areas, because we also recognize that, of course, internationally, it is the focus of the organizations and of the movements is different in each region and in each country of what is the most urgent. There have been, like campaigns for waiving the vaccination patents, etc., etc. So there's different types of places we are working on these different topics, and maybe we could go one round around, and you could talk about where the work of your organization fits into the plan to save the planet and how that relates, because we are here at the NATO Counter Summit, and how that relates to peace. Do you want to start?
Should I start?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, then I would speak about like two main campaigns we are like making in Italy, and it's really as Potere Popolo, power to the people, and I think it's really important because it reflects also the points in the plan to save the planet, as you said. The first of it is like in Italy, a general referendum decided that in 2011 that water should remain public. So the state has and the municipalities have to guarantee public access to water. So no private interest into the water question. Now we are having a really huge problem in Italy. We have a water emergency, above all in the northern part of Italy, which affects the agricultural industry, which affects also like the everyday life of people, because they have to turn off the water access for the people in the house. So we have really a huge problem of water because I mean, Italy is like on the last position of collecting rainwater. Italy is like the most cementified country of Europe. So we have like developments like how this country was developed that affects, of course, these water problems. But now what is the reaction? Like the reaction is, we have to turn off the water for private households. And the second thing, like the municipalities are starting privatizing again the water in the municipalities and on the national level. And we are really making a huge fight against this privatization, bringing together like all social forces around this topic. And it is really one of the main campaigns we are leading in Italy, because it affects really everyday life of the people. And I think this is also a way, because, and I want to just mention something, I think this is the huge challenge of like building the peace movement. That's what is exactly the peace movement? What is exactly the peace we want? We mentioned it, security and so on. We have to define it. And I think like a kind of socialist peace, we have to define what a socialist peace is. And so like guaranteeing the water access to everyone, guaranteeing that the public is controlling the water system and that no private companies are making like profits on the water is something fundamental. And so we are like fighting for that. A second campaign we started 2 days ago as Power to the People. It's a campaign for a minimum wage. We have in Italy, we ask 10 euros minimum wage per hour for everyone. We have in Italy like 1 out of every 5th worker earning less than 10 euros per hour. That's more than 5 million people. And we saw already on Thursday, we went to the street in over 30 cities of Italy. We made like a public launch of our campaign. We spoke to the people, we distributed flyers, we explained our campaign that has like different steps. We also want to bring into the parliament, Italian parliament, like a law proposition for a legal minimum wage. And the people reacted like with, yeah, I want to be involved in this campaign. I want to participate because it's like something that is touching also my everyday life. And so like these two campaigns are for me very concrete and very a good sign how we should, in a way, also, like we said, as I said before, we have to define our demands, but at the same time, you have to think about how to bring them to the masses and how to organize the masses for putting pressure on the governments. And I think such concrete campaigns are a fundamental tool for us to go back to the masses and work with the masses.
So it's employment and resources. And isn't it funny how this is like, you're talking about a concrete Italian case, but we all know it's completely universal. Like the fight for resources, or the fight of public control over resources, or the fight for like dignified employment is completely universal. So we can talk about the concrete and still remain, you know, utterly within our internationalist framework. Do you want to go, Mika?
Yeah, and maybe I'll mention the kind of, in terms of two different scales, both, you know, nationally and regionally or continentally, and how we're organizing our struggles in relation to the demands in the plan, is that, of course, again, we also have an emphasis on social securities are part of the bigger picture of imagining what peace looks like. And so, I mean, right now, NUMSA, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, have been embarking on a strike of around 4,000 mine workers around contract brokers or labor brokers, and which ultimately, if we're tackling the issue of those mechanisms that render work precarious, then we're dealing with security, right? You know, that sense of security that now there's not like a hierarchy of people who are essentially divided because there's these labor brokers who, you know, keep them apart. So I think that's one of the ways where we're trying to deal with this. Like, how do we actually ensure that there is guaranteed, safe, and equal pay? I think that's a security question for us. The other is, of course, we have, sadly, questions around sovereignty that we're still trying to deal with. So we've seen it in Swaziland with our comrades there. We have it with our comrades in Western Sahara. We also have it within countries who supposedly have been historically the bastions of liberation, like Ghana, which Ghana is struggling with a massive external debt, and yet is housing and allowing for example, the US military to operate through their international airport, even though it's not a base in like name, in terms of the way the armies are allowed to move freely. They can, you know, have their weapons on them and don't have to disclose. If they do something criminal, they're allowed to get away with it. They don't have to be persecuted. So we have our comrades in the socialist movement of Ghana who are fighting in that realm, which again, they're trying to link the question of our external debt to the question of why is it that the US can operate freely? And one of the US generals called that airport the bus station to West Africa. Just like it, and that's the kind of level of thinking, but they're trying to link those issues so that security isn't just over there, but has an element of the social. And lastly, I would want to raise that in terms of what the plan in the first section talks about democracy and the new world order, or the world order, we hope for a new world order, around how we have like strengthen regional bodies, is ultimately a big issue for the African continent. Is groups like the African Union, which is supposed to be, you know, like the AU of our continent, consistently has been undermined and has no political, economic, or even social power and sway in society. We saw that in Libya. They had a plan, they were on their way, like a day before they get to Tripoli, NATO comes in. So they have no political influence in that way. And that's why for us, in the last 5-6 years, we've been trying to build a regional process of Pan-Africanism from below, which is why, you know, I'm part of the regional articulation of the International People's Assembly and coordinated by Pan Africanism Today, where we're trying to bring trade unions, social justice movements, anti-eviction movements, peasants, political parties, socialist political parties into the same kind of regional process and try to develop mutual campaigns where we support one another, because it's not enough for NUMSA to call for the security and work if we're not responding to the fact that Zimbabwean migrant workers then get pulled in to do this kind of secondary labor. So for us, we're trying to also address the question of like sovereignty as nations, but also our kind of territorial unity. And for us, we're being more explicit that involves a socialist Pan-African platform, which is very different from the African Union and the kind of politics from the top that they're kind of espousing. So those are some of the ways in which we're trying to work with the Plan to Save the Planet, which already reflects what's already happening, by the way. It's not like the plan came from above. It comes from the material reality and the concrete possibilities that we have.
Yeah, that's great. We also, in one of our recent shows, Nora, if you remember when we spoke with Prasant, he was also very much talking about the regional, like how, living with your neighbors and building up with your neighbors. He was speaking from Asia, like from India, how that is a really, really important build up, because it creates a counterweight that even allows for sovereignty and decision making, and then can be in this dialogue and actually push through some direct concrete campaigns that the ones that you were mentioning. So I think that's really good to hear that we understand that there is something between the global world order and a nation or region or a small community. There's something in between, which is also regional integration, which is important. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about concrete campaigns, because that's only listing. I want to mention an important issue that is connected to, I think, all of us. Globalization has failed. This is a process that is very difficult to maintain. That's why we are all talking about our regional interests. If you remember with Prasant, India is cutting out the exports, right? Also, the African Union leaders are rejecting the sanctions against Russia. So we are in an interesting moment. And when you are talking about sovereignty, we have to actually admit that we don't have sovereignty, at least the European Union members, because what's going on right now in our countries is not okay. It's not, you sovereignty when you are working with others is a negotiation with mutual respect. But right now, we are hearing voices like Ursula von der Leyen or Josep Borrell that are not representing the needs of the countries that are integrated in the European Union. So the first thing I want to say is that, first of all, we need a plan, okay? Secondly, we need to save the planet. And we need to connect
Okay.
That's it. Okay. So sorry, because internet it wasn't working. So I was saying that we need a plan, first of all, and we need to save the planet. And this booklet is not about being the smartest people. If you read it, you will just see and read common sense.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's just to figure it out, to realize that we have so much common points to work together, that we need that plan to be for all. Independently, that then we have to adapt things. But we are all interested on health, on labor issues, on sovereignty, and I think that now for us, for my organization, there is this importance of alternatives and plans. And regarding sovereignty, we need a regional project also. We need to realize that, and we need to work concretely, but also thinking of what we shouldn't do again, right? And there are a lot of things, because the European Union is not very it's not worthy for us. So I think that we are involved in that process that talks with refugees and migrants. We developed an alternative project of the European Union Council regarding the new asylum and refugee law. But also we have the understanding that we have to work with Africa, because I have to remember also common sense. In Spain, we are also in Africa. We are a country that is bi-continental, like Ceuta and Melilla or Canarias, it's part also, if we see a map, it's down the Mediterranean. So we need a European Union that understands a different way to work with Africa. So I'm not going to talk more about that, but I'm just saying that what we are trying to find is talking about priorities. What we are doing from the social movements to the labor movement, even into the institutions, is to fight what's supposedly to be a priority. Because here we are facing a very difficult situation again with the far right. We just saw one article today when I was also reading the newspaper that they are saying that why are we refusing NATO? They don't understand that as Communist Party of Spain, but also they are just saying that they don't understand why we are legal. So this is the battle that we are in, and in this battle what we say is that we have to fight for another priorities. That's why for instance, the Ministry of Equality, we've been fighting for the rights of the 189 ILO referendum for domestic and house workers that connects and puts at the center of the political agenda the center of who is exploited in this capitalist system. So just to finalize, I'm agreeing. Peace is not for the peace movement, feminism is not for the feminist movement, and ecology is not for the ecology movement. And peace should be a priority for all in all political practice, because without peace, there is no social justice, and we are talking about that. And that's why we need to find this kind of plan that is alliancing people for peace, for social justice, and fight against the alliance of war and destruction.
Cool. Thank you, Nora. Thank you all. If there's any, because here we can do whatever we want. If there's any last words, any comments you want to make around this, and if not, then it is up to us now to figure out what do we do after.
I think to have breakfast, because I think we messed up with time, and actually, with this technical innovation we are doing in person, this is not being streamed at 11. So I think that actually for the first Saturday, we can, after this show, go to have breakfast.
That is a concrete first proposal. I do think my question was going a little bit further into the future. It's difficult to say goodbye after 21 shows, so I think that we need to come up with a new concept and a new idea, and we have to come back with a new idea and a new show to work with People's Dispatch. Thank you to People's Dispatch, and thank you to our amazing producer who said he doesn't want to be on the show with us. He doesn't want to be.
We wanted to wish and we love you.
Exactly. So last words or breakfast for everyone?
Breakfast for everyone in a house that they have security for, with their kids going to get educated, etc., etc.
Yes. Okay. Towards a socialist peace.
Towards the socialist peace.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye. See you soon, because we have a plan. Remember, we have a plan together too.